asking, am I Creole, is the wrong question, or who counts as Creole. The real question is, why do so many people with Creole ancestry have the same story?
Hey Lillian, who's that white man you have on the hanging on the wall? But I just asked that question, and that's when she said, "Oh no, baby, that's no white man. That's my pa." And something was sparked inside of me that just basically sent me on this quest to discover my ancestors.
I hate to say it this way. I have family that live as, you know, with the W on the side of their name, and we had to grow up with secrets, put it that way.
Hi, I'm Danielle Romero, and thank you so much for being with me here on my channel where we talk about American identity and family stories. And for those of you who have been with me for the past 2 years, I changed my situation. My husband and I moved a bunch of stuff around this weekend. My last video, I was saying I just feel like I need to do things differently. I want more of that connection, and I want to get back to my roots, so to speak, of really focusing on family history and family stories. And we've been doing a lot of big American history, a lot of big world history, but I want to take a step back. And so today, I've been waiting to bring this video to you guys. I'm so excited about it. First, if you'd like to connect off of YouTube, you can join me over at patreon.com/NYTN, and I'll leave a link to that below. So it's Creole Heritage Month, and I thought about doing a video with a few of my Creole cousins about, well, who's Creole, who counts as Creole. And I realized that asking, am I Creole, is the wrong question, or who counts as Creole. The real question is, why do so many people with Creole ancestry have the same story? That's the thing that has jumped out at me. I want to introduce you to two folks. One is my cousin Alex Lee. He runs Alex Genealogy on Facebook. That group is growing so fast. That page, he is dropping so much knowledge, so many documents. I mean, he's all about the research, but he knows how to make it easy for folks like me to understand. And so I'd love to send you over to his page. And the other is Cajun Nana Cat. And she's on TikTok, which I haven't really figured out how to do TikTok, which is probably for the best. She's got like 500,000 followers, and she talks a lot about her family's story in Louisiana, towing that Cajun Creole line. We sat down and did a video together for the first time on Zoom last weekend, and I did an introduction to that video, and my audio did not work at all. I was so frustrated too because my hair was actually behaving. It's really hard sometimes when you're like getting ready to be on camera, and normally I try to just not base it around what my hair looked like, but I was so relieved that my hair was behaving, and then the audio didn't work. So I'm gonna throw some of that B-roll up so I can just get some time for that hair that day. I want to jump right into that interview, and I'll be pausing it and coming back over here to talk. So let's go over there and talk to Alex and Catherine.
What started my research journey? It was a time that my grandfather, I had just got my call. It was right around income tax time. I can remember very clearly. I had just got my income tax check, and I was able to give me a call. And during that time, I can remember gas was extremely high, so I had to get a fuel efficient car, which I got me a nice 2007 Toyota Corolla. So I got that car, and that was my aunt had asked that I want to travel to Louisiana to go to my great aunt house to go see her. And then that's when I thought about it. I didn't know my grandfather. I didn't think of my grandfather's siblings other than my Uncle Frank, who I actually knew growing up. I didn't think about my grandfather having siblings, and to hear that he had an older sister that lived in Eunice, Louisiana, I was really excited. And I actually wanted to go see who this great Aunt Lillian was. My grandfather, of course, said that he wanted to ride with me because I had the newer car. My grandfather stood in that front seat, and the things that he began to open up with us about, my brothers and I, he began to talk about his family, and that's something that he didn't really do much of. He mainly spoke about work and just life in general, but he never did mention anything about the ancestors or things like that. So as we began to take that drive, like the little Louisiana communities that we passed by, he gave us kind of like some oral history and his experiences in those places. Our grandfather began to open up, and made it very comfortable. I could never forget the way that I had felt, the way that man began to speak about family, I was learning a different side of my grandfather. And then once we got to Eunice, Louisiana, his nephew greeted us and they began to speak in Creole. You know, he said, "Come on, say hi." They began to speak in a different language. That actually set the tone when we got out the car. We experienced culture. We have already heard my grandfather and other family members speak French to each other, but that's when I was much older this time. And I'm like, wait a minute, we really are different people. And when we got in the hallway at the place where my great aunt was living at, I literally smelled the food before I even heard her greet us at the door. And when we got to the door and we saw her, man, this lady was so beautiful. And as I mentioned, they had food cooking. And the smell of the place, we walked in, and I immediately saw this picture hanging on her wall next to Mother Mary and Jesus. And as my grandfather and his sister began to talk and have, catching up, it was her birthday. It was around the time of her birthday, which is one of the reasons why we had went to go visit her. I could not stop looking at this guy in the picture. It just really sparked my curiosity. Like, who's this guy? As they began to talk, I asked my Aunt Lillian, Aunt Lillian, who's that white man you have on the hanging on the wall? But I just asked that question, and that's when she said, "Oh no, baby, that's no white man. That's my pa." And I was confused. Mind you, I'm looking at this picture. I'm like, wait a minute. I, I I-
You
I'm
thought he was native.
confused.
Looking at the picture, he looks native to me.
Exactly. And I'm looking at this picture, and mind you, I never saw any old photo. I didn't pay attention other than the historical figures. I never had access to older photos. So that learning, obviously, that was my grandfather's sister by the father. I was looking at somebody who I did not know. I got my name from him. My grandfather was named after his father, which was Elik, Elik, Elik. So I looked at this man's eyes and I felt the energy change in my body. Something was sparked inside of me that just basically sent me on this quest to discover my ancestors because I have an ancestor that looked like this. I want to know what his family looked like.
So when Alex was talking about like the energy changing in his body when you saw this picture, it was crazy. It was like he took the words out of my mouth because that's how I felt when I first saw the photo of my mom's grandmother, Lola. And I felt like, I mean, I love old pictures, but I felt like there was just like, it was crazy how I got pulled into that. And I just thought, like, whoa, like I need to know everything about this woman. I need to understand this story. And I don't know. It was interesting to me to have this parallel, and Alex and I share a lot more parallels on this journey, even though we're kind of coming from opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, he's in Louisiana, I grew up in New York, but we still have this Creole heritage that is trying to come to the surface, and it's through the photos. The photos.
And that's what originally piqued my interest in wanting to learn everything about me because at that point, I was now being exposed to I really am of mixed race ancestry. As I look at my grandfather, I can recall just having conversations. I remember in the neighborhood when my grandfather used to come, they used to always say, "Who's that Mexican man?" We like, "That's not no Mexican man, that's my grandfather." But of course, we didn't know everything that we actually had in us. But I do remember being in the neighborhood when my grandfather used to come, they would question his race, so to speak. And we just knew he was different. And I can recall me asking my grandfather, "Papa, what are we?" And he'd always say, "Well, I'm a Frenchman." He would say some more derogatory terms that I'm not gonna mention over here, but he never did say or implicate that he was an African American. I never heard him say African American, a Negro, or even, to be honest with you, Black. He always expressed that he was a person of obvious mixed ancestry, and he always described himself as being a Frenchman, or he would say Creole. Mm-hmm. So that's when I really began to understand that from this picture, everything that my grandfather kind of mentioned it kind of, I started to go back and think like my grandfather may have mentioned certain things when we asked him, especially with the people in the neighborhood. And from that trip, what I took from that trip has forever changed my life because that's when I began to reach out and connect with the family members. Maybe a few months after this, you know how you may like it was a life changing thing for me because I even put this picture on MySpace. At the time I was Mr. Too Fly, Mr. MySpace celebrity at the time. I put this picture and I began to reach out to some family members. And that's when my grandfather's brother, he had a procedure done. And I met one of my grandfather's older sisters. And when I saw her, I mean, these were some very beautiful people, but they were very light complected as well. Out of this mixed race ancestry. And that's when she began to break things down a little bit more, which she was my grandfather's older sister that knew a lot about the family. So she was pretty much my go-to person. And in the hospital, she had gave me the number of my mother's first cousin, which was her nephew, so Thomas, who just was recently killed in an automobile accident about a week and a half ago. His funeral. Yeah, I mean, it was a sad thing, but that call to him was the very first step that I've taken in reaching out to family members. So, his death is kind of hard for me because he was the first family member that I called on the phone to connect with everybody else. And he gave me his sister Jackie number, and Jackie gave me her son Denzel number. And Denzel grew up with the family. So that's how I was able to meet some of the younger cousins. And of course, meeting the younger cousins, who are y'all parents, who are y'all grandparents, aunts and uncles. And that's what originally started my research for what everybody know it is today. And meeting those different people, I can remember Jackie, my cousin, my mom's first cousin, Denzel's mom, Jackie, she actually had a family book that had some of the names. And at the time, I was so new to genealogy, I didn't understand the significance of her sharing that family information with me at the time. And that's when I want to say maybe a few months after that summer is when I was introduced to Ancestry.com. So I began to organize the research. And here's the deal what Ancestry does for me. On Ancestry, you had to have a picture and you could upload documents. So me seeing those empty pictures, I then went on a picture quest. Like, wait a minute, I gotta figure out.
The slots.
Yes, I gotta fill those slots. I gotta put photos with the names of these people. And remember, a hurricane hit, Hurricane Rita hit. So we lost a lot of family photos. So during that trip to Louisiana, my grandfather mentioned that their family photos was burned. So I said, you know what? I got a little money. I got a laptop, but I need to buy me a picture scanner because I can recall when we went to Louisiana that first trip, we went to some of the family members' houses and they had old photos, but they did not let us take those photos. In fact, my aunt we could take a picture from the phone, and it didn't really have the best quality, but it was good enough. But I can remember she said, "No, baby, you can't take my picture." I said we was gonna go to Walgreens and get a copy of it, but she didn't want us to take that photo. But guess what? The next time that I went to Louisiana, I had my laptop and picture scanner. So that way, when I was actually taking notes about the family and trying to figure out who everybody was, I was scanning pictures. And I was saying,
I don't mean to interrupt, but did your aunt and your grandfather and them, did they know how to read and write? You see, mine didn't. Mine were a little bit older. My mother's parents were born in 1903 and 1905, and they couldn't read or write. And go ahead with your, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to ask that question. Go ahead and finish your story.
But that's very important that you asked that because guess what? A lot of the family members, they knew the relationship of the person in the picture, but a lot of times they did not know the good names. They knew
Right.
the nicknames.
That's
So
why I brought it up. That's why name variations change. And not only that, some of these older people, our oral history was very, very important. You know, They didn't know how to read and write, so their pictures and their stories that were oral history, yeah, they were important to us, especially for those that didn't know how to read and write.
Again, it was something that I didn't realize until later, maybe later, way later in my research, that sometimes these photos, people can give you a photo and you never have to worry about. Sometimes you never look at that photo again. So these people did not have a lot of the names identified. That's why. That's why, to be honest with you, it was a very significant thing of me getting involved into this research, because I'll share with you all, since I have the screen, the importance of me doing the work. I was able to go into these communities and digitize their photos basically for free. From my understanding, they have to where universities are actually just having community projects in which they're getting grant funding to digitize these things. Or it's now becoming a
Archive
big
'em.
thing to
Mhm.
archive, to digitize and archive these photos. But these are some of the things that I've done before anybody just really thought of it. That's why you see these pictures behind me. These were all scanned and digitized in my first few months of researching. In my first few months of researching, I had already scanned over 3,000 photos that I then present at the family reunion. I'll go in here and share with you all what that looked like. That's why I was getting those photos, because of ancestry kind of led me to get them, but it was really to present them at the family reunion to show people the family. In my opinion, it served as a virtual, it was like, if they could be there to the family reunion, I'm gonna show you the family. It was like a virtual thing
It's
for me.
way better than just words on a paper. You can visually see them even in black and white, what they look like. Well, you see, on my side of the family, it was a little different. On my side of the family, um, during the time that the English was trying to push the caste system, my family was separated from paler skinned people to darker skinned people, and because we were so multi-ethnic, and so I have family. I don't. I hate to say it this way. I have family that live as, you know, with the W on the side of their name, and we had to grow up with secrets. Put it that way. Nice to meet you. I'm Paige and Nana Cat. I do content on TikTok, showing some of my family, and then I got a lot of hate comments for my accent, and so that's what made me start telling the Cajun and Creole history of Louisiana and the original natives and all our history that came before the Louisiana Purchase. And I saw Alex genealogy on other people's posts and commenting. I found him on Facebook like maybe a little over a year ago, and I recognized all the documents that he had, and I was like, "Wait a minute, this guy is legit." Because my mother took it upon herself in the 70s and 80s to do these archives to find out her own family history, because that was at the time that they were trying to change our history to make us change our language, and um, how everybody after the Louisiana Purchase would treat us, and we were always second class citizens. And now they have people that try to still make fun of us for our English accent. And so that's what started me on TikTok, telling our original history. And then I seen Alex, and I had a video that went viral recently, and when I said a certain name in that video, that caught his attention. He was like, "Wait a minute, this girl's my cousin." And we've been inseparable ever since, because I know he put in the work, because I remember growing up watching my mother do the work. I know with this man, what I see in his posts, I recognize some of these exact archives, these exact photos. So it was very touching to me, and it makes me feel closer to my mother, who I lost 10 years ago. And she was proud of her Cajun, native, and Creole heritage, because she tried to get our native status all those years, and the Louisiana natives aren't recognized by the American government. So that's what really led to her starting all this genealogy, and it passed down to me. And plus I had oral history from my grandfather, her father, Lawrence Richard, who was born in 1905. So I know oral history from our own personal family tree back to the 1800s. My mother's grandparents were born in the 1800s. So my knowledge of our history, and because of archives and oral history, might be a little bit unwashed, like some of the history that's taught, and I think it confuses a lot of people, you know. But my mama knew the secrets. But put it this way, my oldest daughter had a conversation with my mother years ago, and she asked her, she said, "Mama, how do you identify now?" Because she was born in 1946, and her mother's ancestry was in question, but her father's ancestry wasn't. But they went down and registered as white people. And so we have family members that are literally our cousins that during Jim Crow laws could not live as family together. You understand what I mean? So it's very difficult for a lot of people that identify just as Cajun to put the Creole in it when they wasn't raised with that, because people were trying to pass, because those English rules were very adamant about the one drop rule.
You know, when I first started trying to figure out about my family on the Creole side, that's what my family had heard. Lola say I'm French. I'm French. Sometimes she'd say I'm Spanish. But there was never a thought of saying, you know, the family's black or the family's African American or anything like that, even though, you know, census records would beg to differ, right? And I was told a story that, you know, this was just like anecdotal from one of my Grammy's siblings. And the story was from their mother, Lola, and that her father, Alphonse Perot, told her, and don't let anyone ever tell you that you're black. You're not black. You're French. And I think about the time that would have probably happened. It would have been Louisiana, and it would have been probably 1915. What was going on for these folks? What kind of stuff were they saying? Well, I know what they were seeing. And actually, my one cousin, who I love so much, Casey, she was doing some research, and actually I was working on this video when she texted me, which was just crazy. It's like you can just feel like we're on the same wavelength. And she was researching Monroe, Louisiana, which is where our family was for a while, and just the high rate of lynching in Monroe, Louisiana, how dangerous it was to be in Monroe, Louisiana. She was saying, like, it overwhelmed her. That knowledge overwhelmed her, because she and I have been on this journey of, well, why didn't we know who our family was? Why were there so many lies? Why were there so many secrets? People were afraid. They had good reason to be afraid. And that's just another piece of the puzzle.
Even in the 1950s, my father has an English last name because his father was an immigrant from London, England. I can't remember if it was World War One or World War Two, but they came from London. An Englishman. He married my grandmother, a Simon from Morris around the Kaplan area. And they got married and had my father. Well, the marriage got annulled when he found out that my grandmother was actually a Cajun and Creole, because the English were very adamant about the one drop rule. And in the 1950s, to have a Catholic wedding annulled, it had to be something egregious. Well, to them, in their eyes, those few drops were egregious. So when I tell y'all my entire family denies our family tree, except for my older cousins that know, you know, I'm not exaggerating. They know the history, they just try to deny it. But I was never close to them people anyway. I found my new family.
So, and and to speak to your point, I think that the interesting thing that I learned, I mean, we all got a very, obviously, we got a unique story, as in, as it relates to how we tie into these families. But I think what I find to be very interesting is that here it is. If you look at my phenotype, the further I go, where my ancestors are. And a lot of times people are the complete opposite. So when you look at how Louisiana has been traditionally, as we look into the records, and all our families, I can find documentation of these people obviously living with each other and didn't care what the phenotypes was. It was all about
I know I'm talking
the
about during Jim
relationships.
Crow laws with my family, because before the Jim Crow laws, my family was intermarrying. They, you know, it wasn't like what it is now. But during the Jim Crow era, and especially the 1900s, around World War II, people were made to feel so ashamed. You know what I mean? Made to feel so ashamed that people denied their own family, even though they knew that was their family.
And a lot of that, so I could take it a step further. I noticed things started to be even more complicated after the Civil War when now people of color could vote.
So I just wanted to pause it there, and they've both graciously agreed to do more videos. I think we need to do some deep dives on some more topics. And I love having the three of us together because there's similarities and there's differences. You know, they were both in Louisiana. They grew up having a little more connection than I did. But there's still a lot of the same story, you know, and she's talking about folks, she said, who were living with a W next to their name. And what she means is family that passed. And it's not just about, well, if they look white, they're white. It's like, if you're passing, it's as if you're passing away. I mean, you're leaving, you're gone, not connected to the family anymore. And, you know, I'm on the other side of that story. The family that was gone is now back again. You know, it's like a little bit of a prodigal son story. But I think when you have topics like this, it's so important to have these multiple voices, these different perspectives. And, you know, so I was just so thankful to have them talking with me. And so let me know what you think, if you have Creole heritage, if anything rang true to you in this, and what you'd like us to talk about next. There's a lot. But in the meantime, let me know. And let me know what you think about a new couch. I think I have a little problem with green. Like, I just realized, like, I'm wearing green. I'm on the green couch. I got all this stuff. And I have my green water bottle. See, that's how you know I'm from New York. My husband always tells me I say that word weird. I think water bottle. My water bottle. I say pillow, too. Anyway, let me know what you think. Check out the links below to Kat's TikTok and Alex's genealogy page on Facebook. Otherwise, we'll talk soon.
Over the last 2 years, I've been telling the stories that often get ignored. But lately, I've been facing an uphill battle behind the scenes of each video. My videos are getting flagged by YouTube when all I'm doing is sharing real history. If these stories have ever resonated with you or given you a new perspective, grab some Be a Good Ancestor merch and help me keep this channel going. Check out nytonashville.com.